Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out People of Reddit. Story 1. Allegedly making obnoxious neighbor crashes his car. I originally posted this as in the sub-ida which was taken down, it seems, due to the destruction of property. One of the. Story 2. My mom is quiet feminism. I grew up on a small farm between two little towns. My dad died when I was a toddler. My mom was left with 7 kids to raise. This was in the 1960s. When my mom went in to order her own first set of checks, she wanted her name imprinted. The banker told her that the account was set up with MR and MR's dad's name. My mom told him that since my dad died she wanted her name on the checks. Nope, the account name was MR's dad's name. My mom instead went to the bank in the other town and created a new account in her name, got checks with her name, and closed the first account. Banks then didn't require you to have an account to cash a check. My mom told me that she thoroughly enjoyed cashing checks at bank number 1. Story 3. You send me some of your literature, I will send you some of mine. Not trying to start a religious debate here, though it is part of the story. I doubt there are a lot of overtly religious people on petty revenge, anyway. Many years ago my grandfather passed away, and he was the first person I was truly close to that I lost. I hurt for months and months afterwards. I idolized him and still do, and miss both he and my grandmother terribly to this day. My immediate family went through some ugly stuff when I was a teenager, and they helped me feel safe and secure. A short time after he passed away I took a part-time job selling electronics in a large chain store, where I met Customer X. Customer X wanted a boombox that would auto-reverse cassettes endlessly so it would play all night. I pointed out one and said, "This one has good sound quality," and he said, "The sound quality is not important, it is to play Bible stories for my daughter overnight. What is important is the auto-reverse feature so it plays all night, and a low price." I was still in a deep depression from losing my grandfather, and not as observant as I usually am. Otherwise I would have picked up on the fact that playing something over and over as someone sleeps is a form of brainwashing. We kept talking as we were shopping, and even through the gloom of my depression I could see this person had some religious mania, and over the course of our conversations I mentioned my grandfather had recently died and it was hard. He was there for over an hour as I helped him find what he wanted, and I went out of my way to get him a great deal on the boombox, which was important because he was pretty broke. As I walked him to checkout he asked me, "Are you a Christian?" To which I replied, "Yes, a Catholic Christian." He replied, "We have Bible study every Wednesday, you should come sometime," and then reached into his pocket. He had several chick tracts in there, the little comics that show someone not accepting Jesus and going to hell at the end, and flipped through them. He deliberately selected 2 from his small collection and gave them to me. I accepted out of politeness and put them in my pocket. Appropriately enough, when I was on the can an hour later I saw them sticking out my pocket. I pulled them out and the first one was pretty typical: guy does not accept Jesus, has a heart attack and is sent to hell. The second one, placed beneath so I did not see it when he handed them to me, told the story of a Catholic man getting hit by a car and being judged, then sent to hell because Catholic beliefs and practices are incorrect. The Church is the whore of Babylon, it is wrong to venerate Mary and the saints, etc. I am not that religious and am more of a cultural Catholic than anything else. My family is Italian and that is kind of how we roll. I believe in God but not in any particular denomination or religion. Customer X has the right to proselytize if he wants, thought not at the store I was working, which is private property, but he did it anyway. What pissed me off the most is what he did was an underhanded, cowardly, and dick way of saying that your grandfather was in the wrong religion, is now in hell and you will join him unless you change and think like me. I was an angry, pissed beyond belief and realized what a shitty move it was to do to someone who was in mourning. It was tremendously offensive to realize what he did to me, but especially to insult my grandfather, and I was not going to let it stand unanswered. I went to the cashier and told her I needed a copy of the receipt for Customer X for a sales spiff. She made me a copy, which had his address and phone number in it. I put the receipt in my dresser drawer and waited long enough that he would not connect the dots on who did what I was about to do. About a year and a half later I went into my dresser and pulled out the receipt. I verified he was still at the address and got to work. I set up a burner email address, then went online and signed him up for about 50 Catholic mailing lists, including some very extreme ones. He started getting the EWTN programming guide, St. Anthony's Messenger, Catholic Missions, Salesians newsletter, you name it. One of them said his name was now inscribed into a book sitting on an altar before a statue of the Blessed Mother somewhere in Ohio, along with his promise to say all 15 decades of the Rosary every single day for the rest of his life, and he was mailed a certificate saying that his name was in the book and proclaiming his promise. I was especially proud of the last one, which was sure to make an anti-Catholic see red. His mailbox must have been overflowing for a while and it would have taken a lot of time and effort to unwind it all. You give me some of your literature, I am going to give you some of mine. Story 4. Brown nosing gets manager in deep SH. TLDR, manager enforces unnecessary rules for brownie points, reacts poorly to negative consequences, creates new rules that discriminate, I out him in anonymous employee surveys. Stubborn manager gets 2 strikes, middle ground also discriminates, and finally he repeals rules before he can lose his job. This all happened about 7 years ago. I worked at a greenhouse and the company had recently been acquired by new owners. Management tried brown-nosing the new owners by adding a bunch of rules to give our greenhouse the highest quality standard in the company, probably to justify keeping their higher pay rate from the old company. Most of the rules were annoying but doable, except the rule that the packaging department couldn't have iPods or phones because of contamination risk. All the other departments were allowed after following disinfecting procedures, but the packing manager wanted to one-up everyone else. The ramifications happened relatively quickly. People got bored, made small talk, talking slowed production, people ran out of small talk, and eventually everyone got more and more comfortable with dirtier conversation. Side note, this change was also rough on the autistic co-workers who needed music on demand for anxiety. My manager is a Mormon and was very uncomfortable with hearing complaints about stories of boomer in movie hookups and homosexual sex lives, on top of the issue of slowed production due to small talk. So he creates a zero-tolerance policy for any sexual talk, but he set the bar way too high. Like PG is a right up high. I get not wanting to hear grandmas talk about getting it on at the inn, but outlawing stories of the first date kiss is a bit much. This was specifically targeting the homosexuals because mild same-sex romance made the more conservative co-workers, including my manager, uncomfortable. Normally not having personal devices or maintaining professionalism are SOP in many businesses, but the standards he set were based on his ego and his beliefs instead of industry standards. He made it personal, so I did too. As luck would have it, we got an anonymous employee survey, multiple choice with an explain section at the end. The new owners wanted to get the employee perspective on management. So I claim to be mid-Hindi conversion and that the zero-tolerance policy is religious discrimination because the Kama Sutra has many sexual passages impossible to discuss in religious conversation without a write-up. Apologies to the Hindus, I only had 15 minutes to act, googled most sexual religion, and speed-read Wikipedia. He had a meeting with HR and the zero-tolerance policy went away for a while. He never suspected me because I was openly atheist and one of his golden employees. I also slanted my handwriting left on the survey so it wouldn't match, just in case. He frequently visited the line to talk about religion, trying to suss out whoever outed him. My instinct to create an employee that didn't exist had been correct. If I had spoken for a coworker or myself, somebody would have been fired. Eventually he gave up and reenacted the zero-tolerance policy when he couldn't handle the dirty conversation shift, again. But it backfired, again. See, normally these surveys are only once a year, but when a manager gets reported they occur every 3 months until the issue is resolved. So I repeat the process but swapped the Hindi convert for a free love ideology hippie. I felt bad for putting a religion in the crosshairs the first time, so opted for someone more generic, literally anyone born before 1980. And I kept the can't discuss my beliefs without a write-up theme. Well, now he's discriminated against 2 ideologies within 6 months and his second visit with HR was extra spicy. At this point my brown-nosing manager has to answer for 2 discrimination strikes and reduced production due to small talk on the line. He finally catches on that the best way to keep people from talking to each other is to give them a distraction. There was a brief period where there was a community Bluetooth speaker and playlist, that also backfired for discrimination because it became almost exclusively white Christian contemporary music. I wasn't nearly as involved this time, my co-workers were on their last nerve and didn't hesitate to report, fueled by the rumors of management's discrimination strikes. The supervisor took the blame instead of the manager in this instance, saving the manager from a 3rd strike. FYI to managers, company/employee curated community playlists need to include everything to avoid discrimination, including satanic black metal and gangster rap. Just grab a generic playlist and blame Spotify if something explicit slips in, boom deniability. My manager finally relented and allowed people to use personal devices for music/podcasts as long as they're cleaned and disinfected before entering, again, same rules as the rest of the departments. People were no longer distracted by idle chatter, the professionalism policy no longer needed to be enforced, and production went back up. Thankfully no parties were harmed. My manager never lost his job, attended HR-ordered anti-discrimination classes, learned a lesson, and is set to retire soon, if he hasn't already. No co-workers were fired during his witch hunts. Morale and production returned to normal in under a year while maintaining his coveted high-quality standard. Also, the supervisor was later fired for sexual harassment. Guess he was hoping taking the hit for the manager would save him later. Only true casualty was my manager's ego. Edited for clarity. Story 5. Using another language to mess with my manager. Let's get this straight right off the bat, I do not need to be micromanaged, especially when working in a cold call center. But for some reason the company thought a manager for the cold calling team, who consistently hit targets, was exactly what our team needed. Enter Sherbert. He would sneak up behind us if we spoke to another colleague for more than 30 seconds, I wish I was joking, he stalked each of us, and would passive-aggressively message us on the work chat, same as old-school Facebook computer chats, if he saw we were typing on there for more than 30 seconds. He was on our asses about everything. It actually started affecting our targets negatively, which only made him hype up his stalking game. Think of Charles Minor from The Office. I didn't just do cold calling in this company, I managed to get a side job of helping one of the senior sales managers, Jeff, way above Sherbert's pay grade, as a part-time PA. I would have a routine of going through some things for Jeff every morning, so I'd write a list. Sherbert didn't like the list because it wasn't cold calling work. The first time he ordered me to stop writing Jeff's list and get calling, I told him I had permission to do what I was doing, but he didn't like this and took my piece of paper with the list on away from me. I messaged Jeff and explained that Sherbert was being a bellend and I'd be late doing his work this morning. Anyway, I decided to mess with Sherbert a little and begin writing another list, a nonsense list, in my native language. I also used a code which looks like Greek letters, something I did as a kid to stop my parents reading my journal, and before long Sherbert was coming up behind me, grabbing my list and demanding to know what it said. It's just a list of things to do. That's not what I asked. What does it say? Private stuff. What private stuff? Stuff that's private. He was getting aggressively annoyed, but there must be a god because his phone rings. He grabs it and it's Jeff. Sherbert was invading my space so much that I could hear Jeff tell him in no uncertain terms that I had permission to do work for him, and if he so much as distracted me going forward he would make sure he wasn't a manager for long. Safe to say, when that phone call ended, I got my pen out and began writing a list in English and getting on with my morning with a big smile on my face, directed right at Sherbert. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.